Greetings, my friends. Reformed Stoic here. Let's get right into it. This one's really coming from the heart. This one's coming off the top. This is a video for the chosen ones, beautiful ones, men amongst the ruins. This is for everybody out there who's being gatekept. I'll put a little bit of thought into this title because those dang old titles and thumbnails are just so important, aren't they? And I'm not trying to... It's one of those things where it just is how it is. I just gotta do what I just gotta do because that's how you grow your channel. But it's funny how relevant that is to the topic of this video for people being gatekept. Because I've got a lot of lectures in my life how it's not all about talent. It's not all about the content of your video. It's not all about being good at something. It's not all about having something good to say. It's about the trimmings and the bows and the thumbnails and the titles and the packaging and, presenting yourself the right way and standing up straight and talking slow but not too slow. And I apologize that this video is going to be a little bit about me being gatekept because I just need to vent a little bit. People on my channel haven't seemed to mind in the past when I vent about things. But if somebody finding this is somebody who's being gatekept, because I'm not the only one, well then you'll be able to relate. I've been lectured a lot about it's not just about talent. It's not just about being good. Drumming isn't all about being good at drums. Rap isn't all about being good at rap. YouTube isn't all about having good content. It's about so much more, but who's missing out? When I don't use the right thumbnails and I don't do this or I don't dress the right way, I don't speak the right way, who's missing out? Me, sure, but who else is missing out? Because if the content is good, and if the drumming is good, and if the rap is good, and what I have to say is good, well then wouldn't people want to hear it? Wouldn't people who like good music want to hear the music? Wouldn't people who need a good drummer want to get a good drummer? Wouldn't people looking for a good content with the kind of content I'm making want to find this content? Who's missing out? Me and the people who aren't seeing it, and the people who are all wrapped up in superficial images, I almost wanted to title this video, What It's Like to Live Outside of the Matrix. I think this is a similar topic, though. I think those topics have enough overlap to where I can pretty much make a similar video. Because when you're gatekept, you're kind of being gatekept outside of the Matrix, and there's some benefits to it, It's like the normies ain't letting you in, so as a result, you're spending less time around normies, and you're developing higher truth, and you're spending more time in places where you're welcome, which ultimately just ends up being around better people. But, as people love to point out, back to like when people are lecturing me about how it's not all about being good at what you do and are trying to make it in. It's like you gotta get along with normies. You have to be accepted. You have to be able to kind of like fit in whatever room you go into. And, I still think there's hope for that. And I think that what happens is you develop yourself and you start getting gatekept, right? And I'm going to go over some of these techniques that people use when they're gatekeeping you. Because if you haven't noticed, am being gatekept. I think I mentioned that. I kind of lost my train of thought, so let's just go ahead and get into that. So I like to think of it kind of like World of Warcraft or something where you design your own character, right? Like in the UFC game, when you make a character, you get a certain amount of attributes, like attribute points, and you can assign those attribute points to all these different skills. It's like I have 150 points, and I can allot them to striking, grappling, wrestling. So you have to spend some time to think, and then kind of like if you play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and you make a custom character. Well, do I want my ollie to be better? Like, if you're going to be boring, you'll give everything an even amount. But somebody who is more knowledgeable about the game will be like, okay, in reality, and I don't know if this is the truth, but I'll just give an example. Like, in reality, it's not as important to put your stats into grinding because you can actually just kind of balance it with the controller. So what you want to do is give all your stats to air, because the air is something that's like, you can't do anything to increase it in the game with your controls. So you can master your controls in certain things and then give more stats. So chances are, guys, there's going to be certain stats that you can minimize and then certain stats that you can maximize in who you are, in your character, to get further ahead in life, you know? You'd think the kind of pragmatic, logical choice is like, oh, well, let's give everything even stats. And these are kind of like normies. And when you have this kind of unbalanced character, you know, which, you know, people tell me I have no self-awareness. I do have self-awareness. I see that, like, sometimes I talk fast. Sometimes I start out with kind of like an uneven rhythm. Sometimes I kind of don't match the energy of, like, the atmosphere that I enter into. But I start getting my rhythm. And I'm very polite for the most part in my interactions. And what I notice getting into the gatekeeping, because all of the stuff about stats, to wrap that up, is like, I think I put more stats in logic, rhetoric, the meat. That's the theme with me. I put the stats in, I'm a drummer, so let's put stats in, like, being good at drums. I'm an intellectual, so let's put stats in logic, rhetoric, and these type of things. But the stats that seem to be a little bit weak is like being normal, how I have my facial expressions, how I carry myself. I kind of have this like manic energy sometimes, and maybe I should try to like slow it down and talk more normal, you know? But my character that I have developed has gotten some things done. And first of all, guys, if you're somebody who can relate to this video, I'm really hoping that, like, I'm always hoping my videos can bring some new people to the channel. Not that I don't love my regulars, but we need to grow here, and we're struggling. If you're finding this and you're somebody who's being gatekept, give yourself a little pat on the back, because that means you got something to offer. But unfortunately, the world is this certain kind of way where you get people who have balanced stats, and the key stats that you realize are like the most important. There's going to be people surpassing you in the world who those stats aren't quite as developed. And then your stats are like well above average and unique, and you have something special. But people are going to gatekeep you and point out your flaws. And if you made any flaws like 3 or 4 years ago, well, they're just going to beat you over the head with that flaw, and that's usually a sign that you're doing better. It's a sign that you haven't really made any key mistakes in a while, so they're just going to keep pointing back to the past. But I wanted to get to next with this, guys, because I actually really am trying to make shorter videos. I think it would be better for my channel to make some shorter videos, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Talent, good art, a good product is the truth. And if you just exchange, it's like, you know, you're good, whatever, that's the truth. Like, you offer the truth. When something is good, it's because it's objectively good. Because the truth is that it's good. It's the truth. Okay? Now, there's higher truths, like Christ is the ultimate truth. See, I've gotten to this point, there's people in the past who, like, tried to act like it was bad when you talked about, like, Christ being the Logos, and then, you know, Logos is this Greek concept of truth. I mean, I would say that Christ is, like, more than that, ultimately, but, yeah, I don't really have a problem with Christ being called the Logos, the truth. The truth is good, objectively. Objective might as well be like a synonym for truth. Objectivity This is what happened in art once we got to this, like, what's this art I'm thinking of? Like Picasso, the kind of more modernist art where things are more subjective and relative and like, oh, it's just like a bunch of strange shapes and random colors and splats and splotches, and oh, that's so good, because art up until that point was very objective, and same thing with music, I guess you could say. And I think music is a little bit less subjective than people are like trying to paint it out to be today. But when we're talking about like classical music, it was obvious if it was good or not. So when you're speaking your truth, when you're doing your orator deal, when you're speaking, when you're playing music or whatever, when you're doing whatever it is you do that's good, it's blinding. It's like this light that's blinding to people, and it's something that other people wish they had. And what's going to happen is that you had to make sacrifices to get there. And it's this sad reality of the world that people who have created these skills usually are flawed in other areas, because you got to spend time to develop these things. You got to make sacrifices, and a lot of times what gets sacrificed is other elements of your character, other elements of who you are, other attributes, other skills. And I think a lot of brilliant people have come to the realization that putting on airs for people, trying to like pass the tests of the in crowd, because guess what, guys? You can try to do all that stuff, and what's going to remain is the black pill, because they're going to find something to criticize you on. All right, don't give me this spiel about how like, oh no, you can do it, you can have this amazing talent, and you can also pass all the normie tests. I mean, what it's going to come down to, guys, is they're going to find things. And one of the first things I notice is like people trying to like, their facial expressions are reflecting that like you're doing something wrong. Like you're speaking in a way that you shouldn't be speaking, or there's something wrong like with what you're saying. And it is possible to just genuinely be kind of like being a spurtismo and blowing it. But what's going to happen, guys, is you're probably a person who's been there, but you've grown out of that. And what people are doing, and I truly believe this, in fact, I feel like I know this, the person is looking into your character, and what you're saying in this particular situation is actually brilliant, and you're well spoken. But they're tapping into your psychology, okay? They're giving you these body language signals like you're being a spurtismo to try to tap into that time in the past when you were. It's a way of holding you back. It's a way of trying to remind you of who you were and how people used to respond to you. Because in reality, guys, a lot of times, you've done the work. So maybe it's a little bit convoluted what I was trying to say, because really, you've done the work. And you have improved a lot of aspects of how you carry yourself. But these gatekeepers are afraid of your truth because you got it better than they do, okay? And we really are living in a world where the people who shine the brightest oftentimes don't make it as far as they should, at least not in the beginning. And maybe people kind of roll their eyes at some of these examples I've used, like Michael Jackson or Tupac. There's a ton of them. But think about people who are a little bit too real, and they have that kind of once-in-a-lifetime talent. I think Michael Jackson's a really good example. Michael Jackson was like stupidly talented. I heard people talking recently about how people would like faint at his concerts because, he had it all, man. Singing, dancing, songwriting. He was really a once in a lifetime kind of superstar. And, you know, when we're talking about like his controversy later on in the courts, I'll just go out and say that I think he was set up. And I think it was easy to set him up because he was a little bit weird. And eccentrically talented, brilliant people tend to be a little bit weird, which makes it a little bit easier for people to set them up. It's as old as time. It's something that happens, okay? These beautiful souls who have sacrificed certain elements of just like being normal and like saying the modern lingo and holding their facial expressions the right way and dressing the right way. They've sacrificed these social norms to boost their stats up in areas that have created this like cracked character. Because in terms of art, in terms of being brilliant, in terms of like harnessing a truth and a skill, it doesn't matter like if you're speaking the right lingo. It doesn't matter if you're the guy who's getting all the high fives in the locker room. That stuff is not going to make you more brilliant, man. These guys got their eyes on the prize and they become these highly sensitive, creative people, and the world wants to shut them down, man. And in Michael Jackson's case, it's not just because people are jealous of how talented he is. Like, he's on a whole different level. He got to a point where, you know, his beautiful mind was speaking out on some things that were devastating to the powers that be. Okay? And I think you see a little bit of that with Tupac, and I think you see a little bit of that with a lot of different kinds of people. Maybe JFK. A really stereotypical one would be Martin Luther King. Maybe I need to come up with some more unique examples, but they're out there if you look for them, if you think about it. Maybe you can leave some examples in the comments of brilliant people ahead of their time, creative minds, different kind of artists who just, when you do get past the gatekeepers, okay, when you do get past the people trying to act like you don't even have anything, you know, people calling you crazy, people calling you a schizo, man, that's a really common one, bro. But if you do get past the gatekeepers and you do get recognized, you could potentially upset the status quo. And for me, I can already tell you that, like, I have said things that upset the status quo, and I'm also being gatekept. So I've already, like, upset the status quo on a small level before really getting anywhere, which, in terms of trying to get anywhere, it's not really the way to go. But I'll tell you what, if I ever do get anywhere, man, oh man, are there going to be fireworks. There are just going to be fireworks because my story, my experience has a lot of energy behind it. Man, I talked about this concept on stream where, like, I just had a lot of negative energy in me. And it all came out in 2020, okay? And it became like this volleyball. And all these people tossing this volleyball of negative energy around, they're the kinds of people that they've never had access to, like, high levels of energy like that. And they don't know what they're doing. And they're having fun, and they think they're hurting me, but really, like, they're getting hurt. And I honestly feel bad for how people are getting hurt because there's people, like, becoming obsessed with me. I've watched so many people become obsessed with me because of this thing that they don't understand. It's like I have just kind of hacked life, okay? Anytime there was a rule presented to them in elementary school or high school or college, they took it as law every single time. And I became someone capable of critical thinking, capable of questioning. You know, they're all just using the laptop that comes out of the box, and I've created some crazy homebrew computer that looks like it's going to explode, you know, and people look at it, it's like, wow, man, like, what an idiot. Why don't you just use, like, the regular computer? It's like, oh, well, this computer can do all kinds of stuff that, like, your computer can't, and maybe someday that will become evident. But it's not just me, man. I know I'm not the only one, and there's levels to this, and I have a message for some of the chosen ones. It's weird. I'm hearing more and more and more chosen ones chime in, like, oh, you know, like, if you're dealing with like mobbing or gang stalking, it's just like your friends and it's like jealous people. Like there's no like organizations or intelligence agencies behind it. It's like, I want to give you guys the benefit of the doubt saying that, but I'm going to leave you guys with this. There's levels to this, okay? There's levels, and you might be from a small group of friends where you're kind of elevating past your friends, so you got like a group of 4 or 5 people jealous of you, trying to hold you back, trying to gaslight you. It might be a little bit bigger. You might come from a really big family that's got some sort of a family kind of curse type of situation, and you're leaving that behind, so you got a big family, like 20, 25 people that's jealous of you. There's levels to it, guys. And different people experience different things. It's not a competition. You're not really winning like any prize worth winning in this unless you make it past the gatekeeping. And in my case, you don't want to be tooting your own horn. You don't want to be patting yourself on the back. But if I get past the gatekeepers, I'm going to say this once and I'm going to move on and I'm just going to let it be. You're looking at a rapping, drumming, theologian, philosopher, author, life coach, martial artist, okay? So, I got a lot of skills, man. And I really don't think I should like apologize or be afraid to say that. I made some mistakes. I was very sloppy in my come up. I think if there's one thing you can learn from my story, it's like don't rush it, guys. Don't rush it. Take it slow. Make sure you got the skills. Make sure you know what you're going to say. Because when you start walking that tightrope, okay, it's going to be like walking a tightrope when you're on camera and people are watching you and you're trying to prove yourself. People are going to try to knock you off balance. And when they knock you off balance, they're going to try to remind you over and over and over and over about how you fell off the tightrope, and they're going to shove it in everybody's face, and you are going to deal with very petty human behavior. And I think what a lot of people from my hometown don't understand is that I'm seeing like their friends and family and people that they've known their whole lives. I'm seeing a different side of people who ultimately I can admit for the most part are good people. Like, it's not just black and white, okay? It's not just like there's good people and bad people. Like, there's regular people, okay? And then extraordinary people. Extraordinary. Beyond ordinary. You might say that's weird. You might say that's fantastic. It's like these ordinary people who have followed the rules and lived their lives. See, I'm like Morpheus in the Matrix. This is like when Morpheus is showing Neo the Matrix for the first time. He's like, look at all these people. Doctors, police officers, politicians, clerk store baggers, airport security. These people don't know anything beyond the Matrix. And they're much too adjusted and reliant on the Matrix to ever be okay with the idea that it's not real. These aren't ultimately bad people, but they will attack you when you threaten their idea of what is. So, and if you're somebody who's getting canceled, if you're somebody who's getting gatekept, I think you really need to hear that. Like, the people attacking you aren't necessarily bad people. And people watching this go down, they're going to understand. It's like, oh, well, that's Joe from the barber shop, and, he's cut my kid's hair for 30 years, and blah, 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 blah. These people aren't axe murderers, dude. These are regular people, and they're doing everything they can to stifle you. So when you're dealing with this, you're going to have to, have this kind of loving kindness with how you handle it, because you are dealing with regular people being toxic. Now, they are being toxic. They are displaying obsessive behavior. They are going out of their way to obsessively try to stifle you, but they're regular people. There's something kind of negative about being a regular person, but you only realize that when you're extraordinary. And I think a lot of people in my audience are extraordinary. Because the last thing I have to say about this is when you're being gatekept, people are going to slip through the cracks. Everybody that's here slipped through the cracks, bro. Because the methods being used are pretty efficient to keep the masses away. But as I clean up my image and as I do the work and as I kind of balance my stats a little bit more, And more than anything, just move and get a clean slate. I think I'm gonna be all right, and I think whoever's listening to this is gonna be all right. So that's what I have to say about gatekeepers, guys. First and foremost, it means that you're onto something, bro. Now, there's always that guy who had talent and just kind of made it, you know. It didn't really like go through the whatevers. I think you see that a lot in sports, okay? There's a difference between like the physical athleticism of sports or like just kind of like a career path of like being a doctor, and then like a creative or kind of intellectual outlet. Like, you are trying to help the world in a unique way. You're trying to innovate. You're trying to do something new in a world that is growing sterile, that is really gatekept more than it's ever been. But there's always been gatekeepers, and there's always been people being kept on the outside. So I hope this video finds you well, and I'll see you next time. God bless. Reform Stoic out.